Very good. Thank you. So, Fernando Pena here. I'm the president of AFA. This meeting is called to order. This is the 2023 annual meeting of the American Printing History Association. So I welcome all of you AFA board members, friends, past members. Thank you all for coming. I just want to say a little bit about what to expect in case you're new to our annual meetings. This will be at the beginning primarily a business meeting, reports from officers. All of our current officers will read reports, prepared remarks. Then there will be a nominating committee report, an election of incoming trustees, and a re-election of current trustees. And then I will read my report, or give it and formally read part of it. And then we will have the presentation of awards and the presentation of the fellow, the Mark Samuels Lasner Fellow for this year. And then we'll end the end of the meeting, hopefully all in about 2 hours. Within 2 hours, we'll end with announcements from the floor, as we traditionally end our AFA meetings. So this is how we normally do it. You know, we haven't been doing AFA board meetings via Zoom for very long, so some of it may be awkward at times, but hopefully not too much. We do have a little bit more experience now after a couple of years of conducting board meetings and annual meetings via Zoom doing this, but occasionally there are hiccups, so hopefully not too many. I do encourage all of you who are here who want to make remarks to primarily do it via the chat. So open up the chat. If there's a remark that you want to make, please make it via chat. There will be an opportunity, as I said, at the end of the meeting during the announcement section to make actual remarks on behalf of your organization. Anything like that, any related organizations are welcome to do that again at the end of the meeting. So we will begin now with our reports. And actually, again, just a reminder that we are recording this meeting. And the recording will be available hopefully in the next week or two on our news feed. So all of you who want to let other members who weren't able to be here know that the recording will be available on the news feed soon. We haven't always done this in a very timely fashion in the past, but we will try to do that very quickly for this year's meeting. So we begin now with a report of officers with Harold Kyle, the current Vice President of Membership. Harold, I turn things over to you.
All right, thank you, Fernando. Thank you for joining everyone today. For our membership, we are seeing a trend that we. Am I muted?
Yes, there you go.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
All right, thank you for everyone for joining today. And I will give the update on the membership. Currently, we have 517 active members, which is 26 fewer than last year. So we're seeing every year, we see fewer people. We're trying to reverse that trend, but could certainly use everyone's help trying to spread the word and rally people to renew or upgrade memberships. Earlier this year, we conducted a survey on our demographic information of the membership. So we asked some questions we hadn't before to try to get a baseline for diversity efforts. And this was announced by email, and I think in retrospect, probably should have had print publication of our print marketing for this as well. I think in the future when we do this, we'll try to spread the word better. We had only 45 responses out of the 517 members. So take these numbers with a grain of salt. I think when we do this again, we'll try to spread the word a little better. But among the respondents, I could say that the things valued most were the Printing History Journal, the annual conference, and local chapter events. Those are the three things that people identified as being most valuable from AFA. Among the respondents, most people identified as a printer or printmaker, 21%, as an archivist or librarian, it's 15%, and scholar, 14%. 93% of the respondents identified as white, which is, I guess, a number that the diversity committee is trying to help make more diverse. 17.5% of the respondents identified as LGBTQIAP+. None of the respondents were under 30 years of age, but among the ages over than 30, we had a fairly even distribution. And another good note is that none of the respondents said that access to AFA programs were impeded by accessibility issues. So I think with Zoom and being able to reach out, we've been able to reach more people. But we'll likely try to do this again in the future because it's something we're tracking as a way to try to help diversity efforts. And it's a baseline of where we are at the moment. Moving on, I wanted to share some news from the local chapters where a lot of activity happens. The New York City chapter is in the process of reestablishing itself. And I know that Joel Mason, Champ Smith, and Fernando Pena are working to get scheduled events in the next few months. So stay tuned for that. New England reports events at RISD, the Stages of Freedom Heritage Museum. They had a conversation with Frank Romano and Matthew Carter and a talk by Lois Serrata. In upstate New York, my chapter, our chapter, I should say. We had events featuring Print Club of Rochester, Salt City Book Arts, Leah Macklin, and a presentation by Robert Lee of the American Wood Type Museum. We also conducted a print exchange with the portfolio celebrating the Erie Canal. Chesapeake chapter, we'll speak more on this, but I think they've been involved in an effort to raise funds and purchase a common press for the Library of Congress. We also had events with Seth Gottlieb, the Ephrata Cloister Conestoga Press, and the Lancaster Printers Fair. Ohio River chapter had several events with the Cincinnati Type and Print Museum, including a visit from the itinerant printer. And the Northern California chapter had an annual Valentine's Day broadside printing with the San Francisco Public Library, Type Walk in downtown Oakland with Paul Shaw, and it held its annual meeting and event at the Letterform Archive. It's a lot of cool local events, and as many of these are conducted online, you don't really have to live in that region to be participating in a chapter event. You could join a chapter even from afar and learn more about the events in that area. So something to consider. And I know the other vice presidents will talk about the programming we're planning this year, but I'm really excited to see us going back to semi-annual publication of printing history. A hybrid conference is in the works. I think these are great times to help grow our membership and retain people. So I'm hoping and get your help in doing that, spreading the word, encouraging people to join and also upgrade memberships. And I will say too, just because of rising costs, especially in the printing, but just more generally with everything these days, they put a lot of pressure on our bottom line. And so we're currently exploring membership dues increases for the first time since 2009. Typically prior to then, it was revisited, it was adjusted every 5 years, but it's been a long time. And we're currently looking into that. So just wanted to give people a heads up. That'll be possibly later this year. Anyway, that's all I have at the moment. And with that, I will turn it over to Danelle Moon, if she's here, for a report on the programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. She is.
Okay, good.
Sure. Very good.
Thank you, everybody, or good afternoon for most of the folks who are on the East Coast. So I'll read my report just as how we just started this process. I wanted to just kind of give the kudos to all the folks who actually put together the October program that was extraordinarily successful in Los Angeles, and we missed those of you who weren't able to join us there, but it was also a great first experience post-pandemic where we were actually able to come together as a group. For those of you who weren't there or don't recall, we actually had this great program called Making Artistic Noise, Printing and Social Activism from the 1960s to the present. It took place in Los Angeles and it was our first collaboration with the Rare Books LA antiquarian booksellers. And we're hoping that part of the papers that were produced through the presentations will end up in Printing History 33, which we're soliciting right now. February 15th is the deadline. And that is scheduled to appear in the summer 2023 issue. and I'll be serving as the guest editor for that particular issue. We're hoping that we'll have more experiences both in writing and the ones who were able to attend to learn more about what was actually happening on the ground in LA. This conference took a lot of people to put together, and I can't express my gratitude for all the folks who were part of that, including Nina, Amelia, Diane, Paul, Harold, and David, and Fernando, and Alex. And so thank you all for all of your hard work on making that a really successful program. We also had some really great West Coast sponsors in making that program come together, including having some exhibitions opening for people, including the Center for Political Graphics, Codex, the Corita Art Center, the International Print Museum, Self-Help Graphics, and Art, and the Zamorano Club. So thank you to all of those folks who helped us get those things in line. Jennifer and Brad Johnson of the Johnson Rare Books agreed to co-sponsor the conference in conjunction with the LA Rare Book Fair. And they actually paid for the rental of the facility at the Proud Bird Museum, which is near LAX, kind of a funky little center over there in LA. And so that was a really a major generous donation from the Johnsons to help us kind of really make that happen. And then, of course, we had some great donations from the Pine Tree Foundation, which supported many student scholarships. And of course, Boxcar Press provided beverages and goodies for the conference. So we really want to thank everyone who provided all that generosity to us. In December, Danielle Aubert, she's a professor of graphic design at Wayne State University in Detroit. I hope some of you, I'm sure many of you were at that session. That was a Zoom presentation. She was speaking about the power and the promise of a union, labor printing and graphic design, and presented her research on the Detroit Printing Co-op and case studies for contemporary union organizing efforts. And I think it was very well attended. I don't recall what the numbers were, but Fernando probably has that in his notes somewhere. Also, as was noted in a December message that was sent out by Fernando, in December, the next year's conference will be taking place actually in Austin, Texas, and it will be held at the Harry Ransom Center. And we have a really exciting program that's being developed by the locals over there in Austin. And so we'll be putting out more information about the conference as we get closer to doing some of the organizational sort of work behind that. And then also in terms of the Lieberman lecture for this following season, we're hoping we're probably going to be hosting it in Berkeley or San Francisco area, so that we can bring in one of the printers in the Bay Area or the California region to do a presentation as part of that Lieberman lecture program. And again, we're hoping that these meetings will continue as both as a hybrid sort of format, so that people who aren't able to make it to different parts of the country based on all these other things will be able to at least join in virtually. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Danelle. So Danelle, who is up next? Excuse me, I've got to look for my schedule. Joseph Beery, VP of Publications, please, Joseph.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? I hope so. I am very excited to complete my first year as VP for Publications, and I'd like to thank everybody who's helped me in this past year. Most especially, we had a publications committee that was created this year, and that included Sarah Sowers, Joan Boudreau, Paul Moxon, Kathleen Walkup, Harold Kyle, and Fernando Pena. Their advice and expertise has been very important to the accomplishments of the committee this year. And I think some of you have been out to your mailbox, have seen that the latest issue of Printing History, all 1/2 inch of it, a a real doorstop issue has come out. I want to thank the editorial committee for this issue, which was Irene Titchener, Sam Lemley, and Paul Shaw, and most especially our guest editor, Dan Arbino from the University of Texas. This issue, of course, featured the AFA 2021 conference, Impresos, and I, of course, have to thank the organizers and presenters of that incredible conference. And it's a wonderful issue. It's been a dynamic year for publications at the American Printing History Association. The Publications Committee was created. The journal Printing History 3132 was published in December and is in your mailbox. To my knowledge, this is the most extensive issue of printing history published to date. 10 original articles, including an interview, 2 book reviews, and illustrations presented in 124 pages. This issue also responded to the dramatic changes in the printing industry of the last decade by being printed digitally on an HP Indigo press. This technological innovation saved AFA over $3,000 in printing costs. I know some of you have probably fallen out of your chairs and are getting back up into them. Thank you for your flexibility with this. I think that when you get the issue, you will see that it is pretty phenomenal printing. The Publications Committee believes that it is time to retire the double issue format created in response to the unusual requirements of the COVID pandemic. We will return to publishing 2 issues each year, with Printing History 33 to appear in July. Conversations continue regarding a 2024 AFA 50th anniversary commemorative publication. The Publication Committee seeks interested individuals to serve on this committee to plan this publication. Please contact me if you're interested. Finally, several co-publishing ventures have been suggested to the committee and will provide more information as they develop. The committee also recognizes the considerable importance that our website and social media play in contributing to the publishing mission of AFA. We commend the considerable work exerted in this area for the last dozen years by our webmaster, Paul Moxon. Paul has on his own initiative expanded this presence onto 3 different social media platforms. So thank you once again for all the help you've given. Please pass the word that we accept advertisers for Printing History, which helps defray the cost. And we also are always looking for contributions to the journal Printing History. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Super, super happy with all the work you and your committees are doing. Thank you. So next up is our treasurer, David Goodrich. David, please.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Fernando. As he said, I'm David Goodrich. I'm the treasurer of AFA. I'm in my about to be my 14th year as treasurer, as a matter of fact. And well, Joseph and Harold and Donnell have really described what we did last year. And all I can say is that the finances followed right in step. That the dues income was actually a little bit up this year from the year before. The conference was within a few dollars, and I think it's about 80 of breaking even. So for all practical purposes, we broke even on the conference. We've granted a fellowship to Mian Chan, who's studying printing in China at this time during the sort of the Cultural Revolution phase, I think, during the communist regime. And we sponsored the Lieberman lecture that was given by Daniel Aubert. And we published 1 double issue of Printing History. And we completed most of the work on the second issue, which you all should have received in the last few days. Well, looking at our financial results, we really have to look at this over a few years at a time, because falling behind on Printing History during COVID meant that we showed surpluses in 20 and 21, simply because we didn't complete what we're hoping to do. And then in 2022, we have a deficit as we catch up. And we're going to have a deficit again in 2023 as we catch up. But I think when you look at the whole period, 20 through 2021, 22 and 23 together, you'll see we're doing just fine. That we are, however, going to need to use some money from our endowments. Fortunately, we have been able to build up an endowment, and over the last really 10 or 15 years, we have constantly added to it. And its value has been on a roller coaster for the last couple of years. It was way up at the end of last year, and it returned back down this year, but it's above where it was 2 years ago. And we are able to withdraw money from it at a very conservative rate, which is less than the earnings rate. I want to make sure everybody understands we're not taking out our earnings. We only take out a portion of them to pay for our ongoing costs. So the endowment at this point stands at about 325,000. I said at the end of 2021, it's I think up a little bit since then. But even with the endowment, we are going to need some additional funding to continue our program as we're going. And as I think Harold mentioned, we're going to have to consider some increase in dues because they've been stable since 2009, and price levels have not been. That's basically my report. I thank everybody for all their work, and let me now turn the program over to James Asher, who is going to give the report of the nominating committee on behalf of Haven Hawley.
Thank you, David, as well. James, please.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you all. I'm presenting on behalf of E. Haven Hawley, but as a member of the nominations committee. This year, there were three slots to be filled in order to ensure that AFA has 9 trustees, as directed by our bylaws. The nomination committee is pleased to recommend Christine Moog for election to a first term, and Diane Diaz-DeFazio and Ksenia Thomas for second terms. The election slate put forward by the nomination committee has a good geographic range and ensures continuity of knowledge within the board. Diane Diaz-DeFazio is a special collections acquisition librarian based in Northeast Ohio. Her scholarship centers on women and artist books, the manufactured rivalry between painters Celia Bow and John Singer Sargent, and American publishers' bookbindings. Diane works with booksellers and institutions to expand holdings in alternative and underground press, queer print culture, and work by women and BIPOC printers and artists. Ksenia Thomas is the owner of Thomas Printers, a commercial letterpress print and design shop in Cleveland, Ohio, where she has produced social stationery and fine art for nearly 15 years. She's the co-founder and director of Ladies of Letterpress, an organization founded in 2008 and dedicated to the promotion and continuance of the art and craft of letterpress printing. Christine Moog is a book designer in London, England, specializing in monographs and catalogs on art and architecture. She's the author of Women and Widows, Invisible Printers in Making Impressions, Women in Printing and Publishing with the Legacy Press, and Women Printing and Prosecution in Printing History and Culture, Volume 2 with Peter Lang Publishers. Mr. President, I move Diane Diaz-DeFazio and Ksenia Thomas be appointed for their second terms as trustees, and Christine Moog be appointed for a first term as a trustee.
James, thank you. Since this motion is coming from a committee, it does not need a second, so we will now vote for the appointment of these trustees by an anonymous poll. And this is an actual electronic poll that Harold is now going to put up. You'll see it on your screen right now. Let's see, yeah. Just make sure this is working. Harold, I see votes coming in. We'll give everyone a minute or so to do this. And admittedly, Harold, I am having trouble. I see the results as a co-host, but I can't seem to vote. I don't see I probably am seeing a different screen as a co-host than other people. So I'm seeing the votes come in, but I'm not able to vote. That's okay. That's okay.
I
Don't
wish I
worry
could
about
help
it.
you, but
No, that's okay, Harold. Don't worry. I vote yay, but we'll await, we'll await the anonymous
having the
votes
same
of
problem.
everybody else.
Briefly, while people are voting, I apologize to Ksenia Thomas, who I misstated who she is. I had out-of-date information. If you're following the chat, you can see the discussion of it, but I apologize. That was inadvertent.
Thank you. Thank you, James. So let's see, votes are still coming in. I see 41 people voting so far, but I'll give this another minute. If anyone is having, hopefully people are not having too much trouble seeing this or voting. But as I said, I think it's only the co-hosts that may have had trouble like me to actually vote.
Yeah, it sounds right.
We have a note in the chat about how co-hosts don't generally have the ability to vote.
Okay, thank you, Diane, or whoever that was. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Now we know. Let's just give this another minute or two. So remember, you can vote yes or no, according to the poll.
All right.
I think
Everyone ready to close this? Is anybody else not voted who would like to? Okay, I will end the poll.
Great, thank you. And actually, if you could, I think I can still see the results. So I will now read the results. I see 42 out of 43 people voting yes, one person voting no. And those are the results. So thank you, James. The motion passes. So now I would like to just sort of thank our new trustees, Christine Moog, and our incoming or re-elected trustees, Diane and Ksenia. Thank you for the ones who are already here for your hard work so far on the board. And we look forward to Christine's participation from London in the near future. Thank you all. So that concludes this. Now I will read my report, but if you could just give me a minute, guys, I'm actually going to share my screen as well. I've got a few slides that I want to show you, primarily photographs from our recent events, especially the Los Angeles conference. Let me make sure I do all of this correctly. Okay, so I think I need to just hold on a second. I will start sharing now. Make sure I do this. Okay, share. Let me know if you can. No, I think that didn't work. Oh, I picked the wrong. No. Let me know.
It's working. It's working, but you can hit present from there, maybe.
Exactly. Play from the start.
There we go.
Right. Is that okay? Can you guys see it?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, good. Now, the only problem I see now is that I can't see my remarks, but that's okay. I think I remember what I was going to say. Sorry about that. Here we are. What I wanted to do first, and I do have prepared remarks, but I'm not going to read them until a little later. I think I remember most of what I was actually going to say. I just want to thank, obviously, all of the officers and committee members and other committee chairs for all of their hard work during the year. I mean, none of the work that this organization does can be done without you. So thank you, Harold, David, Danelle, Joseph, Carrie, and Ethan from the Diversity Committee, Paul Moxon, of course, super important in all of the work that we do on the web. Thank you all for your work. And I encourage, I rather look forward to more, more work with you guys over the next year. What I wanted to do first is share this quote from, if you can all see it, this is something that Haven Hawley, our immediate past president, has shared before. This is a quote from 1974 newsletter of AFA. It's not our bylaws, but in fact, I think really nicely encapsulates the mission of the organization. And I think also the spirit that still animates all of the work that we do. We're humanistic, we love cooperating with other organizations. We work together with all of our members and our friends within the organization and beyond to push forward this love that we all have for the printed word for printing, the technology, books, etc. This is what really keeps us going. And I think even if our interests over the years have changed slightly, it's still this kind of animating principle that keeps us focused on all of the work that we do. What I want to spend most of my time in this report is going over recent major accomplishments. Some of it has already actually been reported on by my colleagues, other officers, but I'll repeat some of them and actually show you just a few images. So Danelle didn't show you images of our conference in Los Angeles, but I will now. This is our lovely logo at for the conference that was created by Paul Moxon. And just a few snapshots that I took from my iPhone during the conference. Can everybody see this, just to make sure? Yeah, okay, good guys. So just a few snapshots of what I think was quite a successful program, as Danelle said, in terms of attendees. I think the total number of registrants in the end was about 81. The venue worked out for the most part fairly well. I thought there were a few shortcomings, and I'll say just a little bit more about that in a minute or two. But the venue was the Proud Bird, this conference facility near the Los Angeles airport. So here is the opening speaker, Lincoln Cushing. So our opening keynote, the Thursday evening of the conference. And then just a few other snapshots that I took the following day of another one of our keynotes, giving a speech here, her presentation in this room, our panel from Self-Help Graphics that Danelle organized here, and just a few other photos that I'll scroll through as I speak. As Danelle said, we were incredibly proud of our sponsors, but in particular, being able to give out 25 in the end, 25 scholarships to members of local organizations, to local printers, students, artists, also first-time presenters. And frankly, this is something that we decided to do because initially registration for the conference was a little slow. And I think this is all kind of still lingering effects of the pandemic. People are afraid to travel. People don't want to travel. So registration was a little dampened at the beginning. So creating these scholarships was a way of obviously boosting attendance, and it worked incredibly well. And it was really through especially the grant from the Pine Tree Foundation of New York and Sylvia Smuck Tannenbaum, who's someone that I've known for a while here in New York City, that allowed us to create these attendance scholarships. We also created a special scholarship fund that a lot of AFA board members, a few other members, and including a few conference attendees contributed to. And it was really through, again, the Pine Tree Foundation grant and AFA board members contributing to this fund that we were able to provide these first-time scholarships. And this allowed us in the end to break even and do the work of the conference. The conference in the end, I think, was very successful and really, really proud of the work that we did. Here's our final speaker, Marshall Weber from Brooklyn here in New York City. He was the final keynote on the Saturday afternoon of the conference. And his presentation ended with a show and tell, and this is part of that show and tell, him here, and actually Lincoln Cushing helping out during that portion of, and a few other members of the audience helping out during that portion of the show and tell. So again, thank you to the Pine Tree Foundation and to all other sponsors and donors that made that conference possible. And as Danelle said, we're looking forward to working with Jim Kuhn and the curators of the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas at Austin for our 2023 conference. You'll hear more about this upcoming conference a little later during this annual meeting, I assure you. So we'll learn more soon about what the actual theme of the conference in Texas will be, scheduled for sometime in the fall. And again, news coming soon, and hopefully the call for papers also coming very, very soon, probably in February next month. The call for papers will go out. So again, I just want to use this opportunity to thank Jim Kuhn and the Harry Ransom Center for saying yes, for agreeing to be our hosts for this conference. It's exciting for us. We haven't been to Texas to Austin, my home state, since I think the late 90s before I was involved in AFA. So I haven't been to Austin myself in a number of years. So really looking forward to visiting AFA, rather to visiting Austin again as part of AFA in the near future. Just another image, I think, of the remodeled exhibition spaces at the HRC that I found online. Looking forward to seeing that. And as Danelle said, we had, I think, a very successful talk as well, a Lieberman lecture from Danielle Aubert early December. And here's just a screenshot of that event. And I don't have the actual numbers with me, Danelle, but I think it was about 50-ish people, more or less the same number of people attending the annual meeting right now that attended our event in early December. And that was recorded, and we apologize, we haven't put up the recording, the Zoom recording yet on our YouTube feed, but we will do that soon. Everything just takes a little longer for us to do at AFA, considering that we're a small organization. A lot of the work, the real work, is done by the officers and board members, and it's just a matter of putting our presentation, the video together, and making it attractive before we actually upload it to Zoom. A little editing work, but hopefully it'll happen very, very soon. I'm going to say a little bit more, turn back to my notes in just a few minutes, but I want to just again thank all of the work that Joseph and his committee, publications, and the editorial committee of Printing History have actually done in taking us back to sort of the schedule soon, the summer, our two issues a year schedule, and obviously the work that he described in the current issue that is in your mailbox. I actually got my issue, Joseph, just a couple of days ago, my issue of Printing History. So it did come through. And then just a slide that I have here that I had also prepared for our annual conference a few months ago. Just a snapshot of what's coming up with Printing History later this summer. Printing History 33, as Danelle mentioned and Joseph mentioned earlier, it'll be devoted to the conference that just happened in Los Angeles. And Danelle is our current VP of Programs, is also the guest editor for that conference. And so it was really Danelle who kind of spearheaded the conference theme and knows the most, we think, about the topic of the next issue of Printing History. And then we'll be back, as Joseph says, December, issuing Printing History 34. So back to two issues a year. Now that the pandemic is over, we really need to sort of focus back on our bringing everything back to schedule. And actually, one thing that I did forget to say, I'm going to stop sharing now. Let me stop sharing, and I'm going to go back to my notes. And can you all just see me back again? Right? Yes. Okay. So very good. Thank you. So let me just go back to my notes so that I don't forget to say what I'm supposed to say. Just give me a second. I did want to say something after I just sort of reviewed the programs for the year, the annual meeting, and the Lieberman lecture, the two sort of national programs, something that Danelle alluded to just a little bit earlier. The annual meeting annual conference, was completely in person. We were very saddened that in the end, because of infrastructure problems at the venue in Los Angeles, we were not able to present a hybrid conference, or at least broadcast stream conference proceedings to kind of our general membership. It was something that we really wanted to do, and we really tried hard to do, but infrastructure issues, technical issues there with the facility, we just were not able to do that. On the other hand, the Lieberman lecture was completely virtual via Zoom. Anybody, anywhere could attend. That was, on the other hand, an event that we were hoping to actually do hybrid, to have the venue here in New York City and invite Danelle here, or even locally in Detroit where she was, and have a hybrid event where people could attend in person and then broadcast the event to people who are not able to actually be in the room. What I want to do today is just to pledge all of you here that in the future, we are going to make every effort possible to present all of our national programming, both the annual meeting like this one, our annual conference, and the Lieberman lecture, to always present them either in a virtual format or, even better when possible, in a hybrid format. So actually have people in a room, but then broadcast the proceedings live to anybody who wants to participate from their own homes. We understand, obviously, the membership is changing. People are not able to fly as easily as they could in the past. There are still, health and safety concerns and frankly, issues of sustainability, climate change, people who are cutting back on air travel for various reasons. So we realize that having this hybrid or virtual model for all future programming is super important for us. And we're definitely going to make I can guarantee now that the conference in Texas is going to be broadcast streamed live to members who can't participate in the room in Austin. And we're making sure that whatever we do in California, assuming that's where the Lieberman lecture takes place later this year, as Danelle mentioned earlier, that's also broadcast or streamed to participants all over the country who can't be in the Bay Area for that particular event. So just look for, but hold the board to that. We really are going to make every effort possible again to have virtual or hybrid programming this year. I just want to say a little bit about diversity. This is a top priority, as you heard from Harold's report earlier. Our membership is still primarily white, and non-BIPOC, not as diverse as we wish it were. Our board is more diverse than it was probably 10 years ago. I'm an example of that, I think, and certainly other active board members. And we're always making every effort to diversify the board as possible, and we still do that now. We're still doing that now. But one thing we haven't done as well, I think, and this is something that's been discussed on the board recently, I've discussed it with Carrie and Ethan, who are our current chairs of the diversity committee, is we need more coordination maybe from on behalf of the diversity committee with actual chapters. A lot of our chapters actually are already doing diverse programming, but it's not always, people who are not parts of those chapters who aren't keeping up with the reports submitted by the chapter presidents to the full board aren't necessarily always aware of the interesting programming that's actually happening in those chapters, and aren't necessarily always aware that some of that programming actually is geared towards new and diverse audiences. So I just want to make a special effort this year working with Carrie and Ethan to work with chapters, and also work with Harold, who is officially, according to our bylaws, the person who oversees on our board the work of the chapters. I want to work with all of you to make sure that better coordination is taking place between the diversity committee and also chapter presidents, so that all of the programming is geared towards, again, these new audiences, and more importantly, that the programming is broadcast better and known by our broader membership, so that all of us know better, and have a better clear idea of what's happening at every level of our organization. And just a little bit about our chapters, as Harold said earlier, there are a couple of chapters that have been fairly dormant for a couple of years since the beginning of the pandemic, especially here in New York City, and also our Southern California chapter. Since the annual conference in Los Angeles, actually, there were 2 or 3 people at the conference who live in Los Angeles who were very keen on kickstarting the work of the Southern California chapter. So we do expect to get together with them very soon to hopefully start planning events in Southern California again. It used to be a very active chapter, but hasn't been as active again in the last couple of years. Same for New York City. This is traditionally the founding sort of chapter of AFA, since most of our membership when the organization was founded in 1974 were around the New York City metropolitan area. So it's traditionally been sort of an important chapter for our organization, and also a very active chapter, but less so the last couple of years. So just after having had a couple of conversations with Joel Mason, the past president of AFA, and actually recently a conversation with Jared Ash, the immediate past president of the local chapter of New York, and also Chance Smith, we've all, and Paul Shaw as well. I saw him about a week or 2 ago. All of us have been talking about, again, kickstarting the local New York City chapter. So all of you who are New York City chapter members, you will be hearing from us very soon, hopefully in the next month or so, about, or even sooner than that, about a whole slew of events for the spring and early summer. So just to let you know that we will be, again, gathering again as a chapter in New York and planning events very, very, very soon. So look forward to that. I just want to say a little something about something I've taken an initiative in as the president, and something that's been actually going on for a couple of years under Haven. This is the bylaws review. This is something that Haven started, I think, last year before I was on the board. And it sounds like a kind of a boring project and kind of an administrative exercise, but in fact, it's super important for our organization. You know, we as a board take our bylaws very seriously, and we try to refer to them as often as possible in our daily seasonal work. You know, we look at them at our bylaws frequently as we're organizing meetings, as we're scheduling board meetings and events to make sure that we're doing the work that we do, again, on a regular basis, according to what our bylaws dictate. So we are now, thanks to a very generous donation from a board member, Harold Kyle, we were able to hire a nonprofit attorneys, a law firm here in New York State that are helping us now to actually revise our bylaws. And this is a fairly deep and broad revision, something that we haven't done since I think 2006. So it'll be a more extensive revision of the bylaws than usual, but basically it'll be a revision that allows the board, I think, to function a lot more smoothly. It'll include revisions that allow us to create committees more easily, something that we haven't done in a very formal way up until now, although we do have committees, but we're trying to formalize that in the bylaws so the committees actually function in a more sort of official way. And then we're also taking care of a few other little issues in the bylaws that I won't go into now, small issues that I think that were not very specific, detailed in the past that will have occasionally inhibited the work of the board. So we're revising all of this now, spelling out again these sort of inconsistent, vague areas of the bylaws so that the board, I think, will be able to function more smoothly in the next year or two or three. So it is something, again, it's a committee that I've taken ownership of as president, and a number of other members, including Haven, on that committee. And we've met only once so far, but we will be meeting again very soon now that we've actually received a red line version of our bylaws with a lot of comments from our lawyers. So we actually have something to work off of. We'll meet very soon, and hoping that later in 2023, probably the summer, that we'll begin to review our proposed amendments with the entire board, and then go through the procedure of actually amending the bylaws formally according to our bylaws. So we're going to amend the bylaws again according to the rules within our bylaws that call for such amendation. And I'll end finally with something else, I guess, as an ex-librarian. I'm not really a rare books librarian anymore, but I still at heart consider myself a librarian. Something that I've been very keen on is making sure that our archives and records, our institutional records, are in good order. They're currently housed at Columbia University at the Rare Books and Manuscript Library of Columbia. So they're right here in New York City, not very far from where I live. So as we approach our 50th anniversary, I just want to make sure that the records are obviously up to date and in good order. And also, I want the records to be in good order because I'm hoping very soon to work with Paul Moxon and maybe other interested members of our board, other volunteers that I can get. We want to work on updating portions of our website that are, I think, a little out of date, especially again, because of our 50th anniversary, it's approaching. There are lots of gaps, for example, in names and terms of officers on our website. It's unclear who was president when or how long an officer's term on the board was. I want to make sure that all of that is in as good order as possible, and it'll require referencing, obviously, our papers in many cases at Columbia. I also want to make sure that we have scans, PDFs of all of our conference programs dating back as far back as possible. I think right now we only really provide scans or links to conference programs as far back as 2007. We've been doing conferences since the mid-70s. So there are lots of gaps, and we know what the conferences were called, but not necessarily any documentation about those conferences. So I really want to beef up that portion of our website as well, so that we have a very clear idea of all of our conference programming going back to the early mid-70s when our organization was founded. So something that I think Haven and past presidents have occasionally done. I just want to sort of make a call now to all AFA members who are present at this meeting. If you have any AFA related archival material, whether it's physical or born digital, please send it to me. Let me know what it is. Let us know, let the board know what you have, and see if it's something that would make sense to include in our actual institutional archives. So if you have anything that's interesting, we want the physical object, or if not the physical object, a digital copy of it so that we can include in our archives at Columbia, which I should note are both physical and also born digital. So we're contributing both kinds of material to our repository at Columbia. And as I end now, I just want to remind all of you, there may be a handful of visitors here at our meeting. If you're not already an AFA member, hopefully the reports that you've heard so far and what you're going to hear for the rest of this meeting will encourage you to become a member. Those of you who are members but maybe a little out of date in your membership, just remember to renew your membership as soon as you can after the meeting. You can do this online at join.printinghistory.org. And if you can, please, we encourage you to make an additional donation as well, or up your membership. If you're an individual member now, consider becoming a sustaining member, a contributing member, etc. All of this helps us do our work on a regular basis, and this is really the way we sustain our organization. It's really through your memberships and your additional donations whenever they come in. This is my report, respectfully submitted. Thank you. So my report is done. So now I will turn things over to
James.
Johanna. Right, I think it's Johanna Drucker.
I'm ready.
Right, who is
Okay.
presenting on behalf of Haven Holly, who was the chair of the fellowship committee, presenting the fellowship for this year. Please, Johanna,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks for that wonderful report. It's exciting and great time to be part of AFA. And that was reflected in the number of applications that we received for the Mark Lasner Samuels Lasner Fellowship. We got more than 21 applications before the January 8th deadline. The committee consisted of Haven Holly, who was our admirable chair and organized all of the paperwork and files in advance for us, and Miriam Intrader. So we met and went through these applications. I'll say it was really inspiring because you see the kind of vitality of interest in printing history and printing activity and printing projects. So that was great. Almost all of these applications deserved funding, but in the end, we decided to fund Val Lucas, who is here on the screen. I'm going to give away Val. And Val's project is titled Documenting the Engraving of Display Matrices on a Modified Priest Engraver, the Process of Jim Walsack at Sycamore Press and Type Foundry. And I'm not going to read the blurb that's on the program because you can read it for yourself. But I will say that her goal is to document the work of Walsack at the Sycamore Press and to preserve this activity for other printers and for future generations. There are very few people still doing this kind of work, and so keeping this craft alive seems like something that will have a very sort of resonant impact for the field. So as we were looking at fellowship applications, we kept thinking about where's the impact going to be, what's going to make a difference, and what's a project that really it's within the scope of what can succeed if it gets this kind of support. So Val Lucas is going to spend time at Jim's shop. She's going to document his steps from the beginning of the beginning drawings to the finished matrices. And she's going to document the process with video recordings, written notes, and so forth that can be used as a guide for repeating this process in other shops. And again, this feels really like impactful, as it were. So without further ado, congratulations. Can we have a round of applause for Val Lucas? And I believe Val wanted to say I think you're allowed 2 sentences or something. I'm not sure what they allocated to you, but I'm going to hush up and let you speak for a minute, Val. And then I'll pass, once you're done, we'll pass to Diane Diaz-DeFazio.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so honored to receive this. And I have to say, I would not have met Jim if it wasn't for AFA. So I met him through the Chesapeake chapter, probably back in 2007 or 8. Didn't realize how important typecasting was at the time, but now that I've reconnected with him since August of 2021, I have just realized how important it is that this knowledge needs to be saved and passed on, and I'm thrilled to have the support to do that. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. Well, we're excited to see your work. All right, I'm going to pass on to Diane Diaz-DeFazio, and we will hear her report of AFA Awards. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Johanna. I am Diane Diaz-DeFazio, and I am the chair of AFA's Awards Committee. And today it's my honor to present the 2023 AFA Individual and Institutional Awards. Now, as many of you know, since 1976, AFA has presented an annual award for distinguished contribution to the study, recording, preservation, or dissemination of printing history. For the 2023 individual laureates, the awards committee has selected Irene Titchener and Fritz Klinke. They're both here, by the way. In 1985, AFA established its award for institutional achievement, which recognizes the sustained accomplishments and impact of organizations dedicated to printing, book history, and the book arts. Nominees exemplify AFA's mission and values, distribute printing and print history to a wide audience, and further diversity and inclusivity goals in alignment with AFA's 2020 call to action. The 2023 institutional awards are presented today to Tipoteca Italiana Fondazione and the International Printing Museum. And as I said, today we are thrilled to be joined by all of the awardees. As is custom at our annual meeting, award recipients provide brief remarks. You're counting, yes, that means we have 4. We will first hear from Irene Titchener, then Paul Moxon will read remarks on behalf of Fritz Klinke. Sandro Bera from Tipoteca will accept their award, and we will wrap up this portion of the meeting with a 10-minute pre-recorded presentation from Mark Barbour at the International Printing Museum. So we recognize that this is kind of a lot and appreciate your time and attention. And with no further ado, I will turn it over to Irene Titchener.
Thank you, and good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. This is rather a long meeting, and with 4 awardees, I don't want to take up more than a couple of minutes. So I'm going to cut to the chase. The last 2 points I was going to make. The first one I was going to make was when I contemplate the roster of my predecessors for this award, I wonder about my suitability to join, but that doesn't mean that I'm not very grateful. I want to make that clear. It's a nice honor. There are 2, I think everyone knows that AFA was founded to serve to create a very wide tent with many, many aspects of printing history. And we have to keep trying to satisfy the various sub branches of our interest. We know that you don't have to be in the same room with people to work with them on common goals and projects. There's no one room where it happened anymore. Without Zoom, I would never have met Daniel Arbino, the brilliant guest editor of Printing History 3132 that you probably just received, nor would I have come to know and admire the leadership of Joseph Beery, the VP for Publications. AFA, by the way, has been issuing the scholarly journal Printing History since 1979, and it has not always been a smooth ride. So on one hand, we can use the internet to get together. On the other hand, real camaraderie is hard to achieve with people you know only as a small rectangle on your computer screen. This is a cliche. Everyone says it, I know, but it is a real thing. So that's why it's important for us to try to have as much hybrid programming as possible. I cheer that effort on. So 2 final thoughts. One problem AFA had from the start that I believe it has overcome: New York centricity. It started in a natural way because the founders all lived in New York and environs. And depending on how broadly you defined environs, so did much of my generation when it came to our turn to hold the offices. Chapters in other locations were anticipated from the outset, but that was a very difficult system to achieve, and it really didn't make us a national organization. For years, our annual conferences took place in New York City. To me, it seems that we have finally outgrown that geographic prejudice, if that's not too strong a descriptor, that New York centricity. Conferences now take place far and wide, as does the annual Lieberman Lecture. Geography no longer has to be an impediment when planning events. With the 2021 annual conference and the last issue of our journal, we have reached beyond the totally Anglophone existence of our past, beyond the dominant culture, beyond our national borders. Again, oddly, how much do we have to thank the pandemic for that? My second point, from the beginning, AFA was conceived to be a very big tent to include scholars and practitioners, serious printers and hobbyists, people interested in philosophically in the influence of printing on the development of world history. We could say print culture, the sociology of print, as well as folks focused on type, paper, and ink, people who love the technology of printing, and people intent on the aesthetics of the printed result. In casting such a wide net, I think AFA stands alone among the participating bodies in Bibliography Week. So thank you very much, and let me propose a challenge. You be the judge. Has AFA lived up to its potential? Why or why not? Discuss.
Thank you very much, Dr.
And
Titchener.
Thank you, Irene, absolutely.
As I said, our other individual laureate, Fritz Klinke, is in our audience, and on his behalf, we have Paul Moxon reading his prepared remarks. Paul, take it away.
Hello. Speaking in the voice of Fritz Klinke here, doing my best. I am pleased to accept this award from the American Printing History Association. It seems like only yesterday that I first caught the bug for printing and letterpress in particular. I started as a 13-year-old with a Swift-set rubber type press to print a neighborhood newspaper. That quickly morphed into a brand new Kelsey press with all the extras to print an even larger paper. My father was an Army officer, and we lived on base at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And at the time, the workers at the Post print shop always had time to help out a pesky kid. When my father retired in 1955, the move to California meant the search was on for a bigger press. Settling on a 10x15 Chandler and Price, I printed for my high school, doing such things as the yearly literary booklet and student ID cards. I didn't know that printing forms full of halftones was not done on a C&P. While reading a National Geographic magazine, I learned that Carnegie Institute of Technology, now Carnegie Mellon University, offered a bachelor's degree in printing management, which I earned in 1963. The 1960s were full of challenges. I did a 2-year stint in the Army in Germany as a second lieutenant that ended just as war in Vietnam began. Then I worked for Lockheed making publications for the Polaris missile system. We used the early and often crude methods such as strike-on IBM typewriters to get around hot metal typesetting. That led to my switch to Carlisle Company in San Francisco, which had a wonderful letterpress department as well as offset and steel die engraving. I was in seventh heaven being around the large Mealy flatbed presses, Heidelbergs, and even hand-fed C&Ps. I was an estimator and was for a while in charge of the engraving department. We had a large shop of about 250 people, but Carlisle was one of the smaller printers in San Francisco. My proudest accomplishment was estimating a 400-page book of 20,000 copies for the City College of San Francisco that was solid type we set on the linotypes, printed on the Mealys, and I came within $100 of the final cost. So all the letterpress jobs were given to me to estimate, and the other estimators had the big multicolor offset jobs. We did work for local governments throughout California to support demand for bound books. We had a pen engraving, ruling machine. Many of the short-run jobs were run on a hand-fed Mealy cylinder press that the forward-thinking plant manager was embarrassed to admit was still in use. By then, I was also spending my vacations in the mountains of Colorado. So by 1970, I left the Bay Area for Silverton, a tiny town nestled 9,000 feet high in the San Juan Mountains, where the newspaper was still printed by letterpress, and I felt right at home. Meanwhile, my wife and I started the Pickle Barrel restaurant. I got involved in local government and drifted from the upheaval going on in the world of graphic arts. I maintained a letterpress print shop where I did all the printing for our restaurant. By now, the shop had grown to include a Heidelberg, Mealy vertical, linotype, and monotype equipment. In 1996, I was approached by Hal Stern, who had been told by his wife to choose between her or his new letterpress supply business, NA Graphics. That year, I saved a marriage and moved NA Graphics from Cincinnati to Colorado. I have since shed the restaurant and, despite a recent stroke, come to work at NA Graphics every day. I sell traditional letterpress supplies from handset type to Timpan paper to customers worldwide and share my expertise on various online printing forums. It has been a great ride. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Fritz. We're so grateful that you exist.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, finally, hey, Paul. We have next Sandro Berra, live from Italy, where it is getting late in the evening. I will turn things now over to Sandro from Tipoteca, representing AFA's first international honoree.
Okay, thank you very much. I apologize first for my English, second for my voice. I have a cold, so it's a quite terrible evening for you listening to me. Are we really seriously the first international? Because I read on the list there was Gutenberg Museum, Plantain, and even St. Bride that for me are still international, but I'm not sure if I read that, but I will be in any case very happy to be on this list in any case. So really, we are truly honored to be awarded by AFA, and it's the fact that the committee of your prestigious association wanted to give Tipoteca such an award is a source of pride, enthusiasm, and at the same time, renewed commitment. As probably you know, Tipoteca was founded in 1995 as a private foundation by a family of printers, the Antiga brothers. We are located in Veneto, so the region of Venice. We're almost 30 miles north from that town, on the edge of the foothills before the Prealps and the Dolomites. And close to us, there is the birthplace of Antonio Canova, the sculptor. There is very close to us a Palladian villa, Villa Barbaro. A few miles from us, there is the little town of Asolo that is celebrated by Bimbo in the book Asolani that was printed by Manutius in 1505. But we're also in an area rich of business, people who love working, of course, and culture. It's my pleasure to just mention that in Treviso, the main city of our province, there is a poster museum that has a beautiful collection. I saw that there is Paul Shaw among the people listening to me, and I say hi to Paul. And he knows very well Tipoteca, and he visits us quite every year. And we're very happy to have many friends in the United States. Thanks to Tipoteca, Cornuda, this is the hometown where we are, has become a destination for thousands of students and people who love typography. I think that we can number almost 200,000 in 20 years of opening of the museum. And we still smile when we read the program of the study abroad programs visiting of international groups at many universities that they list after Milan, Venice, Florence, Rome, the name of Cornuda. So that is probably one of the things that really make us proud of being here. So when the museum opened in 2002, after 7 years of researching materials and designing the exhibition space, the founders of Tipoteca had a particular type of visitor in mind. They had in mind at that time to create a place dedicated to typographers and printers, which would recognize the historical value of typography and printing, in the dissemination and cultural exchange among people. We've also an eye on the craft. To those who have practiced this precious and fascinating art of hand setting with movable type and printing on iron presses. The fact that from the very name Typoteca has been linked to the type, tipo in Italian is the typeface, the character, was a great choice. The graphic sign is what binds us to the tradition of handwriting on one hand, and on the other hand, keeps us connected to the fonts of the present. But as you know, in those years, the deep digital revolution in our lives and in the world of typography was not fully perceived. In 1995 in Italy, there were still a large numbers of printers using movable type, alongside the printing companies already active in the market with offset printing. After 10 years, the name fonts, the words Times New Roman, were part of everybody's life. And they were the telltale signs of how typography had entered the homes and the daily lives of millions of people. So as a cultural institution, we understand that probably we need to move on and talk to different people. We realized that the arrival of computers had enabled a democratization of typography. Typefaces were no longer the tools of typographers' trade, but were available to everyone on keyboard or visible on screens. Here then, Typoteca no longer spoke exclusively to typographers, type founders, type designers, and bibliophiles, but had to dialogue with the fledgling digital community. It was a Copernican revolution. Of course, the tools that we show in our museum are the tools that are very familiar to all of you. So we're talking of type cabinets, wood typefaces, monotype, presses, and plating. But it was a world that physically far removed from today's typography. So with patience, study, and even a bit of creativity, we had to talk to children and adults living immersed in an environment rich in typography, but invisible to most, often convinced that everything was born with the computer. Let's say that talking about typography and putting it into practice has become a daily balancing between analog and virtual, paper and screen, ink and pixels. Yet man's ability to read and write did not originate with the spread of the first PCs or the PostScript language. It existed for millennia, were acts first cultivated by a small number of people and then became the achievement of millions through schooling and knowledge. So one wonders what the printing museum of the future will be like. Will it still be visited by nostalgic people of the scent of paper and ink, or of the mechanical noise of composing machines and the familiar brief of cylinder presses? It is clear that the audience is radically different. For many visitors, primarily students, typography is touch only because they touch the glass of a screen or the keyboard of a computer. They have never experienced the physical elements needed to fill the gap between lines of type and on the margin of a chase. Their experience of paper is mostly limited to an A4 or letter sheet of 90 grams square meters of industrial production from wood pulp. How can we make people understand and then appreciate the word of first BC, and BC stands for before computer? Perhaps we may sound a little too optimistic, but back in the 90s, there was the talk of the end of printing, and it seemed that paper was destined to disappear. Yet books on typography, design, photography, architecture, art turn out to be curated even in their materials. They are objects today that continue to capture people's attention. And so that means that people need to browse, discover, annotate a book, and it's something that human nature can't miss. Never more than these days is typography popular, for better or for worse. So it is documented. If we think that Netflix, on their documentary series on design, they dedicated an episode to a type designer, Jonathan Hoefler, and that is really amazing. And we can believe that names like Gerhard Unger Matthew Carter, Eric Spiekermann, Aldo Novarese, Adrian Frutiger, Hermann Zaff are familiar to thousands of people. At one time, a typeface designer was known to few. So we are lucky to be able to start from the present, to cultivate knowledge, to teach that even if the tools are different, the legibility and beauty of typefaces are indispensable for good communication, for the harmony of a text, for the sharing of knowledge. So I'm close to the end of my very brief teaching. We must treasure that amazing quote that is attributed to Gustav Mahler. Tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire. Printing museums can be those civic sanctuaries where the fire of craft, knowledge, and passion can be kept alive. And with Norman Potter, designer and teacher, we must keep in our hearts to not be conned in thinking that only new materials or processes are worth investigating. Every material available is strictly contemporary. Thank you.
Thank you so
Bravo,
much.
bravo, thank you.
So our final honoree is the International Printing Museum. As I mentioned, they have a pre-recorded presentation prepared for us, and Harold is going to share.
Can everyone see this okay? All right,
Yes,
I'll get it
yes,
started.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Here we go. Oops, hang on a second. You can see it, but you can't hear it. Let's go back. Take two.
Hello, I'm Mark Barbour. I'm the Executive Director and the founding curator of the International Printing Museum here in Carson, California, just outside of Los Angeles. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the International Printing Museum, I would like to thank the American Printing History Association for the 2023 Institutional Laureate Award. This award is accepted with so much gratitude and humility, knowing that the Printing Museum is merely in the constellation of so many institutions working diligently to preserve and advance the history of printing, not just here in America, but across the world. As with other printing museums and institutional collections, the Printing Museum began with one individual's collection, that of Ernie Lindner, a printing equipment dealer here in Los Angeles. Ernie had spent 50 years of his life finding and collecting important printing presses and artifacts from across the country and around the world. By 1988, his collection would rival that of the Henry Ford Museum or even the Smithsonian. The museum was then established in 1988 by Dave Jacobson, who was a printing industry promoter, who hired me as the curator directly out of college, where I was curating the Shakespeare Press Museum on the campus of the California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo. I had spent over 4 years exploring the ideas of how to make a printing museum interesting and relevant to the general public. And this was not out of a career aspiration. I mean, who would ever think that there was a career in printing history or of printing museums? But rather it was out of a passion for connecting people with something that I became enthralled with, namely antique printing presses and vintage antique type. And during those years in college, I learned the art of storytelling through working tours and demonstrations with visitors and students who came to this small esoteric museum. I also began to use the collection to hand set and print several letterpress limited edition artist books. Without knowing it, these were critical years in forming my concepts and philosophy of how to operate a printing museum on a much larger and grander scale. Following my graduation in 1988, I came down to Los Angeles at the invitation of Dave Jacobson and began my work as the curator of the new International Printing Museum, at that time located in Buena Park, California. Here I was able to implement the ideas and experiences I had with that college museum, but on a larger scale. Working with the Lindner collection, which filled 25,000 square feet of gallery space. Beginning with the Lindner collection, the Printing Museum's extensive collections cover that history of printing from before Gutenberg up through and including the 20th century. Highlights include dozens and dozens of hand presses and early platen presses, early linotypes, newspaper presses, lithographic and etching presses, thousands and thousands of fonts of type, both metal and wood, a large printing history library. And our collections continue to expand. We just acquired the amazing Dave Peat typographic collection out of Indianapolis with over 3,000, 4,000 fonts of Victorian type and 300 plus type specimen books and so much more, as well as a major portion of the Smithsonian's typographic collection. As a standalone institution, however, not connected to a larger museum or to guaranteed government funding, the challenge immediately facing us was how to survive and develop financial and community support that would allow us to continue our goals and mission. And if we're honest with ourselves, the general public is frankly less than interested or thrilled with the subject of printing history. Antique printing presses are certainly interesting to look at, and even by the general public, but that interest quickly wanes. I love this subject, as I'm sure many of you do. But in the realm of printing displays at museums, they're often viewed on the way to something else, often the restrooms. To survive and thrive as a cultural institution, I knew instinctively that we would have to go beyond showcasing trophies of printing's history and towards the relevance of why those machines and tools are important to the story of our country and our civilization. If I had to summarize my institutional philosophy, it would be that the museum's collections need to be used to connect with diverse audiences, developing multiple communities of support, which in turn will give relevance and permanence to our museum. For us, this has translated into creating educational programs to engage a broad range of constituencies, both young and old. The collection is creatively used as a springboard for American and world history, great inventions and discoveries in science, civics, literacy, and art. Through our tours and outreaches, the museum annually works with nearly 20,000 students and the general public through its programs and working tours. We use the school's curriculum to wedge into the schools with their interest in, say, colonial history, or Ben Franklin or Gutenberg. And then we leverage those stories, such as Franklin's and his world and his life as a printer, to attract the interests of educators and take the backdoor approach to introduce students for the first time often to the world of printing and graphics. From our beginning, we have even used theater to accomplish this by having living history characters and actors portray characters such as Ben Franklin or Gutenberg or Mark Twain to engage our audiences. We have developed programs that help nearly 800 scouts annually earn merit badges in graphic arts, paper, and the book arts. Programs that provide a large financial support while at the same time creatively using our collections and resources to build and attract another audience. In 1997, I developed our Museum on Wheels, which now annually travels to about 150 schools throughout California and Arizona. Wrapped in graphics that depict the history of books and printing, our mobile trailer exhibit opens up to reveal Ben Franklin's Colonial Printing Shop. This signature program brings the museum's resources directly to schools and locations that cannot physically access our facility. And yet again, it provides funding for the museum. The museum's quarterly public events, such as our Crazy Crafts Day for kids of all ages, or our annual Independence Day celebration each summer, they engage audiences of all ages. Ben Franklin often regales audiences in our museum's Heritage Theater, depicting his life and the important role books and printing have played in his life. We even give the guests the opportunity to print something like the Declaration of Independence on a printing press, which is how it was done. Watching young kids engage in the graphic arts for the first time, printing on a letterpress or making paper by hand with their eyes wide open enthusiasm is quite a thrill. Since 2008, the museum's Los Angeles Printers Fair has annually brought together over 80 artists and vendors and printers and paper makers and demonstrators to celebrate the creative world of printing, paper, and the book arts. Each year, nearly 1,500 guests travel to the museum and enjoy a weekend full of printing demonstrations, exhibits, and the book arts. The Printing Museum launched its Book Arts Institute in 2021, a 4,000 square foot teaching lab for classes in letterpress, in bookbinding, typesetting, printmaking, papermaking, and marbling. This is helping us to establish yet another community of support, and in turn, helping us to develop the Printing Museum as a hub for the book artists and practical printers. All of these programs have helped us to expand the audiences and communities that support the Printing Museum. Their support has given us our raison d'etre. And that support, both programming and financially, is what allows us to preserve the artifacts and the presses of printing history. Ultimately, the preservation of this material needs support. And critically, it needs financial support, regardless of the institution and the assumption of its permanence. In my short tenure of 39 years as a Printing Museum curator, I have witnessed so many universities, private collections, and nationally recognized museums abandon their printing collections. As a dedicated apostle of Gutenberg, my life's mission is dedicated to the preservation of Gutenberg's legacy. I have moved from aspiring in my earlier years to creating the world's largest printing museum to now a desire to being the world's most permanent printing museum. And this is certainly a steep mountain to climb. But I know that this goal will be achieved through a philosophy of relevance to multiple communities of support. Gutenberg's name, in fact, means good mountain. This is a good mountain to climb. And this institutional recognition by APHA recognizes that we are hopefully succeeding in this important journey at the International Printing Museum. Thank you again.
Thanks so much
Great.
for running the
Wonderful.
press,
Thank
Harold,
you.
and thanks to our awardees. So we are nearing the end of our meeting. I wanted everyone to join me in a virtual round of applause for the 2023 awardees. And with that, I will turn things back to Fernando for closing remarks and announcements. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. All of the awardees, and truly, I think, inspiring. I love the image that Mark presents at the end of Gutenberg, a good hill to climb. It's certainly the mountain, the hill that I want to climb and die on if I have to. So thank you. All of our awardees, or Irene, whom I've known a long time. You're also a model, I think, for how to run this organization and how to be a scholar and a doer in the field. Thank you so much, Irene, and for the work that you've done and you continue to do for our organization. And Fritz, I've never met before, but your life is truly amazing. It sounds like you've had incredible adventures and made significant contributions. Thank you, and thank you, Paul, for your reading. And of course, Sandro and the Tipoteca Italiana. There have been, in fact, Sandro, other international awardees. You're correct, but I think you are our first Italian awardee. We're all definitely looking forward to visiting you soon. I've never been to that part of Italy, but maybe we'll have to organize our first international conference in the near future, something we can now do more easily with the help of Zoom and all of our digital instruments that we have now at our disposal. So I don't have many closing remarks, except to thank you all for being here. And then traditionally, as I said earlier at the beginning of the meeting, we open up the end of our meetings with announcements from the floor. So I'm going to turn it over to, I know at least one or two people who were making formal announcements, but anybody else who wants to announce meetings, anything related to printing, book-related events that are coming up, anything that everybody that the membership should know of, I ask you to do that now before we close our meeting. So any announcements from the floor? Jim has raised his hand. Jim Kuhn from the Harry Ransom Center. Harold, could I ask you to, yeah, there he is. Yes, so I recognize, you can unmute yourself, Jim. I recognize Jim now, who's going to make an announcement.
Thanks so much. I'm pleased to announce that we will be hosting the 2023 annual AFA meeting at the Harry Ransom Center, October 13th to the 15th. We've got a draft call for papers, which is available for just a couple more days for suggestions and comments. We would welcome suggestions for possible keynote speakers, additional volunteers to assist with local arrangements, suggestions or offers of sponsorship. The call for papers will be finalized and circulated on February 1st, so got a couple days. There's a link in the chat. Take a look, and we hope to see you all in Austin. I will say that fall in Austin is a hard time to schedule meetings. This will be week 2 of the
Austin City Limits, I think it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Austin City Limits, yeah, exactly. Musical, whatever.
So book your hotels early. And we will also circulate some housing recommendations at some point as well.
So I wonder, Jim, if you don't mind just saying what the theme of the conference is very briefly. In
Sure,
case people
I'm
haven't.
happy to do so.
And I should just add that the board has actually recently approved, we just had a vote last week to approve the conference theme. So the board knows about it, but if Jim just wants to share very quickly their ideas and their inspiration for this
Absolutely.
theme, please.
Thanks, Fernando.
Sure.
The Printed Weird book history from the margins. Our theme is drawn from the long-standing and much debated local culture rallying cry to keep Austin weird. Our broad theme invites submissions that raise questions about established printing and book historical practices, knowledge, and objects, particularly those that present the odd or alternative, the apparently exceptional or idiosyncratic, the out of the mainstream, the contradictory to received wisdom. And we have a little bulleted list of suggested topics or themes. You may have your own thoughts as well about possible inspirations. And as I said, we do have a few days to finalize this and welcome any suggestions for ways to improve this call for papers, which will go out on the 1st.
Great.
Thanks, Fernando.
Thank you, Jim. A couple of people have raised their hands. Val, and then I'll go to the next person. Val, would you like to make an announcement?
Yeah, so the Chesapeake chapter has a handful of our collaborative calendars left.
Oh, wow.
So if you're interested in one, I will see if I can drop a link in the chat. So grab one, they're really cool. There are 12, actually 13 different printers this year. So get one while you can.
Okay, great, terrific, Val, thank you. Diane.
Hi, I neglected to mention in my embarrassment for my
That's okay.
For my usual, I should say, characteristic gaffe in a public meeting. But what I meant to plug was the AFA Awards Committee nomination form. I'm putting a link in the chat right now. It's very easy to remember. It is bit.ly/AFA Awards, all one word. And the awards nomination period is open now until September, the end of September. So if you're inspired today or some other time during the rest of the year, please do get us your nominations. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Diane, for remembering that. Exactly. No, so nominations begin now immediately, and the work of the awards committee mostly happens in the fall. So at that point, they hope to have enough nominations to sort of start, commiserating and then getting board approval. And we hope to do that. We didn't do it as early as we wanted to this year, but generally we try to approve awardees in the fall so that we can announce them fully in December when I send out the president's letter at the end of the year. So thank you again for all the work that you did, you and your committee, Dan, this year, and for our wonderful awardees and award recipients. Anyone else who would like to make an announcement?
I have an announcement.
Yes, Lauren, please.
Hi, I'm Lauren from the Chesapeake chapter, and I'm just here to announce that we raised the funds to purchase a wooden common press to donate to the Library of Congress. So we're very excited about this initiative that's been ongoing for a little while. We have some additional milestones and opportunities, and some plans for moving it and programming are still all underway, and we will probably have future plans and announcements still to come. Thanks to everyone who donated to this project and for everybody who worked hard to put this together.
Wonderful project. Yes, Lauren, and certainly the board is looking forward to working with you and the Library of Congress on programming, for this press in the near future, and then also ways to fund that programming. So it's certainly something that we're really excited about working with you and the Chesapeake chapter to frankly turn the work that you've done already into a national initiative so that the entire organization from coast to coast can participate. Thank you. A couple of other, let's see, Paul Shaw, please. Paul, you raised your hand.
Mute. Okay.
There you are.
I
Great,
just
Paul.
want to say I'm really pleased to see that the Tipoteca got an award this year. And as Sandro said, I've been leading lettering and type tours to Italy that have included visits to the Tipoteca for a decade. And we're scheduling, we hope, one for this summer that will take place from June 29th to July 13th. You can look it up on my website, paulshawletterdesign.com. And I hope people can join us. We're going to visit, besides the Tipoteca, we hope to visit 5 other letterpress printers in Italy and 1 silkscreen printer.
Wow, exciting. Thank you.
Yeah.
So send Paul Moxon, eventually when you have this written up, or if you already do,
Oh yeah, okay,
write
I'll
up
do
about
that.
this. Yeah, so that we can put this on our news feed. That's terrific. Thank you. Thank
You're
you, Paul.
welcome.
Now, Paul Romaine, I think that is, right? Paul, raising your hand. Paul Romaine would like to say something. Great, Paul.
Thank you, Fernando, and congratulations to AFA and to the entire board and the award winners. I also, my other activities include the North American Hand Paper Makers, formerly known as the Friends of Dart Hunter. Some of you may know them. They are going to be announcing, I don't have details yet, but there will be details, a new Indigenous hand paper making fellowship sometime early this year. Their conference is planned for early October. We're not sure the location. My suspicion, unofficially, is New England. So hope to have that stuff online. You can get information on it on NorthAmericanHandPapermakers.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Fernando.
Champ, yes. Hi, how are you?
Hi. I would like to.
Of course,
say
former colleague from the local chapter. Maybe you have something to say about the local chapter. Please go ahead.
Well, this isn't about the local chapter. This is something different.
Okay.
A New York print shop in the New York State University system is in need of assistance. Ronnie Gross has been teaching there and managing the shop for the last 1.5 years. She wants to hire 5 expert assistants to work for 4 weeks to identify and organize a large amount of standing type. A GoFundMe page has been set up seeking $25,000 to fund the project, which is called the Atelier Project Redux. Considering the rich history of the shop and their holdings of equipment and type, I thought that AFA members might be interested in assisting with donations. We will be posting about it on the AFA homepage in the near future with links to the project and GoFundMe. But you can also search for Atelier Project Redux if you go to the GoFundMe website.
Good, thank you. And this is Ronnie Gross, you said.
Ronnie Gross, many of
right.
you will know her, but also she was involved with Barbara Henry in the Vander Cook book, which was a really great project.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Champ. And Harold just posted a link to the GoFundMe page for the Atelier. And if anybody wants to keep all of these links, the comments that have been shared, of course, you can do that. You can save this chat, clicking the little 3 buttons at the bottom of the chat, and it'll save it to somewhere in your computer. It's not always easy to find a place where your computer has saved the chat, but certainly something that I'll do before we sign out and end the meeting today. Any other final announcements from the floor before we end our meeting? And we've actually done pretty well. Yeah, we're under 2 hours, which is pretty good. Any final announcements? I think we're there. So guys, thank you all for coming, for participating. This has been, I think, a pretty seamless meeting and happy that it all went so well. And we look forward to seeing you at AFA events in the near future, locally or wherever you are, virtually. As you know, a lot of our programs are actually done these days, and certainly look forward to seeing many of you at our conference in Austin in October and other events throughout the year. So again, thank you all. That's the end of our meeting, and just another round of applause to our awardees and to Val Lucas or Mark Samuels Lasner fellow, and to all of our officers who have done such an amazing work, I think, and chapter presidents and chapter committee members this year. Thank you all again, and we'll see you soon. That's it.